when I realized that the whole platform was based on an AI model and it could automate things, that we've been running a company with people in the office pulling their hair out on a minute by minute basis, it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me. And I've sat around many tables recently talking to managers about AI. 95% of them are not really doing very much at all. So there's a lot of noise, but very little activity in all those geographic regions around the world for the 100,000 managers that exist. The number of urban managers I've spoken to, they're all saying, I have a distributed portfolio of 60, 70, 80 properties around London. It's very difficult to run my business. I need a block of apartments. That's the way it's going. You will have industrial sized businesses running these as well. My advice has changed quite radically. Kind of modestly embarrassed to say it because I couldn't see what was coming. My advice now is
property management at scale is about more than just rent rolls and maintenance calls. It's about protecting your assets, delivering stellar guest experiences, and scaling operations without losing quality. Welcome to Minute by Minute, a show where industry leaders share unfiltered stories, proven strategies, and real solutions for operating at scale. I'm your host, Nils Mattisson, CEO of Minut, and together we will dive deep into what it really takes to keep your properties safe, efficient, and protected. Let's get started. Today I'm joined by Richard Vaughton, an industry veteran whose career spans property management, SaaS, international sales and governance. Richard has built and exited rental management businesses in the UK and Europe, co-founded and sold a PMS platform, represented international operators, and now advises management companies and rental tech firms on growth and acquisition strategy. Few people in the industry have seen it from so many angles, and fewer still bring the international commercial background Richard developed prior to entering the SDR world. In this conversation, we'll explore the realities of scaling and exiting management companies, what impact regulatory governance is having on small operators, and the next phase of industry maturity. Richard, welcome to Minute by Minute. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Niels. Really appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you.
Let's start with your entry into the industry. You came into short-term rentals from biomedical sales and senior management. What pulled you into the rental world?
That was around about 1999, 2000, and I decided to leave the running of a subsidiary of a Finnish public company that I'd started in 1992, believe it or not. And that was an entrepreneurial journey as much as anything else. And I wasn't really fit for public company. So we had already started investing in 1999 in our own properties. And like most people in the industry, once you get into it, it's actually hard to remove yourself. But pre-2008, the crash, we actually decided to sell our portfolio of properties, which we did very successfully because we rented them really, really well. And then we ended up getting into management by default yet again. Used to live in Italy, went to Italy, bought properties, found a partner, started a business. 10 years later, ended up with hundreds and hundreds of properties on the northern Italian lakes. And in the middle of all that, started another management company where I live down in South Devon. And we ended up with about 120 to 130 properties. And we exited that in 2016 as well. And also in the middle of all that, like most entrepreneurs, you get bored. So you start a tech business. And there's no point in telling you how hard a tech business is, Nils, because you know how hard it is. And we crowdfunded that 2017. Our best month was January 2020. And our worst month was February 2020. And realistically, that was a PMS, channel management web building system with customers, Asia, Italy, and the UK. We decided that it was going to take a lot of money. Yeah, and we sat around a table and said, do we want to do this any longer? Do we want to go and try and raise more money? Do we want to compete with Guesty, with Marcus, Hostaway, and all the rest of them? We were at a UK company, and we essentially said, no, it could be life-threatening if we actually did that. So we sold the technology stack to Situ Living, which is a mid-term stay business. And that's an industry that's looking to get into a much more distributed API connected environment. So that's 25 years of management and technology businesses rolled into a couple of minutes.
So it sounds like your entry point is really entrepreneurship. How did you decide to start your own business rather than become an employee? And quite early too.
I think it's a personality thing. I think this industry involves entrepreneurs, people who actually want to control their own destiny and not be told what to do. I mean, I was running a company. I had a service business. We'd franchised it to 9 countries as well. I was in charge of 40 destinations. I found employing people quite taxing from a personal perspective. I always needed layers below me to accommodate that. My expectations were probably too high for most people. So doing something yourself, as opposed to being under the auspices of a public company, was me. And I've been my own boss ever since. And I've thoroughly enjoyed every moment of it. And now I do have a consulting company. And, that consulting company doesn't have employees. It has a network of incredibly experienced individuals that we all lean on each other in different disciplines, categories, and opportunities across very diverse geographic areas. Personality, I think, drives a lot of this. And you'll know many who've been firemen, lawyers, doctors, dentists, airline pilots who've all left very professional industries and now inhabit this quite difficult space.
Yeah, it's one of the things I like about the industry, that it is full of entrepreneurs, and I find it makes the industry very vital, because people are always looking for the next thing, and people are always very creative.
There is a problem around that though, Nils, because I actually work with a lot of managers as well. So I work with managers who are building to exit essentially, and the word focus is actually quite difficult for most people in this industry when they build businesses. I'm sure you're the same to a degree. I'm sure you create new ideas on a minute by minute basis. But if you want to be successful, you do actually have to focus.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that it is one of the hardest things in when you're starting out. And I mean, from my background in tech as well, you come with maybe a core idea, and then you look at what else is on the market and you say, the customer would like this and they would like that. And I think that is often correct, but it's not the place to start. You have to crack one thing very, very well and make sure you are differentiated. And maybe that's particularly hard as a property manager, where it's easy to compare yourself with the hundreds of others. When for me as a tech startup, there's only going to be so many people to compare yourself to. But for property managers, of course, there is the whole world. Do you think that's shaping who is entering?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure you're right, Nils. I'm sure you're looking over the horizon now on tech, but as you know, it's very easy entry. It's very hard to actually make a success of it. And with AI coming along now and Chinese manufacturing, I'm sure you've got to have a wall of competitors thinking this is such an easy market to actually penetrate. That's the problem. On the manager side of it, it's an incredibly tough environment to exist in. Because you've got owners and you've got guests. You have enterprise level businesses like Airbnb sucking margin out of it. And then you've got the economies of scale, which are getting more difficult all the time. So it's a very hard environment to scale, let's say, more than 100 properties. There seems to be a threshold at 100, which stops most managers growing. And I suspect that's down to lack of investment in staff.
We've seen that from Airbnb, right? I think they shared a statistic that after 100 properties, the guest satisfaction scores actually start dropping. So you think that has to do with understaffing?
I think no one knows the answer, but it is a very common belief that in the industry that when you get to 100 properties, you can see it. I work with managers with 50, 60, 70, 90, 95 properties. And it's a real struggle to get over that. I mean, in our UK business, we got to about 120, but, part of the reason we had to sell was personal, had got fed up with actually all the hard work. But B, because this is a hyper-local geographic business. And you can only spread your wings so far. And there's only so many properties in that envelope that you're addressing before you hit a competitor. And almost certainly it's almost like a country border, and you're both fighting over the inventory on that border. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge, I think, is that when you get to 100, you might have watched the webinar the other night, and they said you need 10 staff for 100 properties. I think that includes maintenance people and housekeeping management and stuff. I would say you probably need 6 in the office and subcontracted cleaning. But when you get another 30, 40 properties, you need another member of staff. And these days, a member of staff is going to cost you a lot more than it ever did. And I'm going to really upset some people right now by saying that looking at people who want to be employed these days, they probably don't have the same work ethic as a lot of the people who've been doing this for a very long period of time. And it comes as a bit of a shock as the amount of effort you actually have to get put into this to actually, make a success of it. So I think there's a lot of things that are stopping this growth. AI, will it make a difference? Yes, it is already making a difference. But, we can get into AI a bit later because it could occupy an entire hour.
Yeah, but so you're saying there's like essentially a non-linear relationship between the number of properties and the amount of staff that you need that creates this like threshold effects around 100 that makes it difficult to push through. Do I understand you right?
Yes, I think there's. If you're a manager, owner of a business that has 100 properties, and let's say you make 200,000 euros on the bottom line, and you end up with another 30 or 40 properties, there is a tendency to say, listen, we can cram all this extra business in and we can make lots of extra money on the bottom line because I'm not earning enough right now. And that's not the way to do it if you're planning on growth, because you don't do it very well because you're not doing anything very well. So you do need to employ more people. And employing people is that, it's a fairly common thread. I don't want to employ more people. So look at the rise of virtual assistants right now. And, if you go and research the stratospheric growth that we've seen of virtual assistants around the world, you'll see that people are moving staff and employing virtual assistants. Well, virtual assistants don't get new owners for you. They don't do any of the true on-the-ground hospitality, even to the drinking of beer on Saturdays with owners, because they've come down to actually see you because you're their manager and they expect very personal attention. So you do have to still invest in people. And now the virtual assistants are being replaced by AI. So you're going to have a lot better operational efficiency. You're going to make more money out of it. You still have to work with owners. You still have to have that personal approach. And to a degree, the hospitality element with guests as well, depending on the quality of your portfolio, becomes more important. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough. I'm going to do it with people who've got 200, 300, 400 properties, and they've cracked it,
Didn't you yourself have even more than that at one point?
Yeah, we formed a company on Lake Como in Italy. It's called Lake Como Homes at the time. But it honestly, Nils, it was much easier in the year 2006. Virgin territory, the Italians weren't doing this very well, and it scaled incredibly quickly. And there was less OTA pressure that came fairly quickly, of course, with Home Away 2008, 2009. But the same things applied. You still needed staff, and the bigger you get, the more complex the staff arrangements become. But it's almost impossible to do that quickly without acquisitions these days, because there are no virgin territories left. This was this was a lake where Americans went, and George Clooney bought a villa, and everybody wanted to go there. So, and there was 10 years of building planning of new apartments, new villas, new everything, and only local real estate agents that do anything about it. And they sleep most of the time. So one of my messages, if you can find a virgin territory somewhere on the planet, preferably near water, take it immediately.
Yeah, that might be hard. There might be the Somali coastline or something, and there might be an argument for buying up some property there, but it will come with some challenges, I'm sure.
Well, Airbnb and HomeAway with their roll-ups, they've amplified what has actually happened, and they've exposed the general public to the fact that you can make money and you can have an appreciating asset. And the property crash in 2008 also accelerated that, without doubt. Thousands and thousands of people across Europe flipping properties to try and make money. And then the crash came. What can you do? Well, we can only rent it out to pay the loans. So
it's really interesting to hear this. You have a longer time perspective than most, right? Like when most people talk about the crash, they're talking about 2022 maybe, and here we're hearing about it, of course, in 2008 with the global financial crisis. So that gives you like a pretty unique vantage point here. So if you now look ahead and you think about like the next 5 years, obviously AI is reshaping what it means to be an operator, and it gives you tools to maybe run things a bit leaner. So what do you think is going to happen from here?
It's a really good question, Nils, and I wish I had the perfect answer, but I think everybody freely admits they can't really see more than 12 months ahead at the moment, I think. So it's on my LinkedIn. I work with two companies heavily involved with AI. One is Boom PMS business out of the US, and Flataway, AI company for website development, deployment, etc. And I had a bit of a revelation in the VRMA about 2.5 years ago. And that's how I ended up working with Boom, for example. So I got dragged onto the stand as I was a passerby saying, come and look at this. And when I realized that the whole platform was based on an AI model, and it could take all the business intelligence out of it, and it could automate things, that we've been running a company with people in the office pulling their hair out on a minute by minute basis, it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me. And hence I was very happy to become involved with them anyway. So what is it doing right now? And this is a really common question. And I've sat around many tables recently in conferences and small meetings talking to managers about AI, or at least trying to understand what they're doing. 95% of them are not really doing very much at all still. So there's a lot of noise, but very little activity in all those geographic regions around the world for the 100,000 managers that exist. The ones they use ChatGPT, they do a bit of content, The ones with PMSs, enterprise level PMSs, are now beginning to use it for automation of messaging and various things like that. I kind of see the tech industry, because I've been in it, as fragmenting, as being too fragmented now, and too many entrants into it, and all trying to sell products. And those products, I mean, no doubt you'll have AI attached to yours as well for monitoring of guests who are causing trouble, for example. You have dynamic pricing tools, revenue manager, you have guest apps galore. You have about 18 to 20 different categories which are connected into PMSs. And pre-COVID, which is my PC area, is my advice was find the very best PMS you can find and then bolt in best in class of everything else. My advice has changed quite radically, and I'm kind of modestly embarrassed to say it because I couldn't see what was coming. My advice now is you're going to need a single system for about 12 to 15 of those categories, and they are all going to be well embedded within a PMS. So if you take any of them, you take Hostaway, you take Guest, you take Hostify, you take Streamline, you take Supercontrol, you take any of these, they are all building out very comprehensive, almost operating systems that you can run your business on. You have all the information in a single place, and therefore AI actually has access to all the data to give you lots of business intelligence, which means you can actually act upon the business intelligence using AI. So just imagine your guests will be able to book within your system because your system has all the pricing. It has all the owner's rules. It knows the occupancy. It can figure out whether you should give a discount. It can communicate. It can offer extras. It can integrate. It can use the guest app. It communicates with the cleaning team. It reviews your cleaners. It knows the costs of everything, all within a single system. And let's face it, American corporations dominate the planet for virtually everything in large enterprise systems. And I see that's where it's going. But there are certain things they can't do. So there are things like mechanical devices, which is your environment. They're not going to invent mechanical devices. They might buy companies to actually bolt them in to give them extra revenue, but that's not something they will do. Insurance. Okay. Do they want to get into insurance businesses? Probably not, generally speaking. So you will have an API connection to insurance businesses, for example. So there are certain things out there that these large enterprise level operating PMS systems won't actually do, and they're fairly refined categories. But the general purpose stuff, I mean, I can't tell you how many startups I've spoken to in the last year who have created a decent product, but they all need a connection to a PMS to get the information which is resident in it. You know, that's a firewall of complexity and danger in actual fact, because it's easy entry, relatively easy connection if you get one. All of a sudden, you're leaking margin and you could be replaced overnight. So that's where I see that kind of industry go. With the AI element of it as well, you have to think that it is going to automate everything that humans actually do, even to the point in the not too distant future where you will have robots doing things that humans do. And therefore, it's another cost cutting. And if you really want to extrapolate this a long way, already we're seeing staff being removed from businesses. Imagine if you are an enterprise level business in this industry and you've got 100 software developers. In the US, they're probably going to cost you $250,000 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money. They're already using Claude, Anthropic, and various other tools for speeding up their software development. You can guarantee that 100 will become 50, and that 50 will become 25. And then you'll have architects, engineers, as opposed to software developers. What happens at that point is that the companies think they're going to make more money. But all the people they fired have less money. So we're kind of turning into economies that have less money to spend from the people who are not employed or as employed as effectively as they were previously. And then we're going to see diminishing returns because people are going to have to cut costs to get more business. So it's time to leave the planet when that happens. But it's tough, and that's 25, 30 years of kind of seeing what's coming down the line, you know. And the unfortunate thing is we are in hospitality. So travel is predicted to accelerate at an unbelievable rate. And I think that will still happen. But you need enough money to do it, which means it's going to get increasingly competitive. The top end of the business still employs people.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting dynamics that are playing out. So, of course, like we've seen, PMSs essentially consolidate, right? Like they all had to add a price tool and then a channel manager, etc. And it became this sort of new platform. But there are still at least 200.
Well,
right?
There's 611 on the Lighthouse.
611. I'm going to have to update my thinking there. But there's so many of them, right? And there is a real trade-off to be had between doing a PMS for an operator who has thousands of properties, or who has apartment hotels, or who runs villas. So you get this bit of clustering around certain ICPs, and not one solution is best for everyone. So you got that dynamic, which means I think that it's not going to be like a winner takes all market the same way that, for example, many of the more horizontal software tools like CRM, for example, there might be many of those, but Salesforce and HubSpot are the dominant players. So you got that dynamic, and then you have the dynamic which you spoke about, which is sort of the physical world, where again you have to deal with a lot of nitty gritty, like all of the different access solutions and locks and different legals in different markets and things. And there you will probably also see consolidation and platforms. But in order to make that viable, I think it has to stretch across asset classes. I don't think you can make sensors that are just for a specific type of short-term rentals, the way a PMS might be for a specific type of short-term rentals. You're going to have to stretch them across student housing and a few more. And so you might end up with like a sort of third category of things there. And that's sort of where I see things are heading. I don't know how fast it would be going, and exactly what the limits of it are. But I do think that there's something between the very professional systems that you'll see in like a hotel or an enterprise environment, and what you see from like a regular residential environment. And there I think there is a little bit of virgin territory still. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I might disagree to a degree with you. I think if you head back to short-term rentals, which is a very challenging industry, is we've got 100,000 managers with 100,000 different business models in hundreds of languages. Okay. Currently, we have dominant PMS systems in countries by name. So take Avantio, Portugal, Spain, take cross-booking in Italy, take for leisure SuperControl in the UK. In the US, you have the Inhabit suite, Streamline, LiveRes, LMPM, and all the others as well, Track and stuff. So you do have these dominant geographic businesses. And you have lots of little small businesses below those. So those dominant geographic ones, Planetport, Avantio, cross-booking got acquired. Streamline, LiveRes, everybody else got acquired by Inhabit, Greater Sun Ventures deals. So those larger ones have already been acquired. So you have a lot of smaller ones underneath. Those smaller ones don't really make any money. And if they do make money, they make enough to pay your salaries and give you a little bit of extra money. But they were never designed for that. They were designed because people wanted to become billionaires, or at least millionaires. Those businesses are not worth a great deal of money anymore because A, it's easy entry and somebody might be able to break the back of you very, very quickly. And B, you're trapped within that geography. And now we're seeing the very large businesses coming into these geographies as well. And they're also moving into what you said, right? And you're right, hotel sectors too. And there is a bit of a gap space in there, definitely, for the tech businesses. But I see a bit of a challenge coming on for many of these small tech businesses. There's ones that distribute taxes. There's ones that do facial identification, passport identification, automatic check-ins, and all sorts of things. They're also very, very geographic. They're not global. So what would you do? I'd probably go and buy one of these if I wanted to build that bit in the market myself. And those businesses aren't making enough money. So there's a match made in heaven here somewhere for some of these businesses. So I'm expecting to see the next 3 or 4 years, a lot of the small tech businesses just go, this is too tough. This is just too tough. Hardware, that's a different environment entirely. And I think there is one thing that overlays all this, is that I'm pretty sure I could go to China and create a competitor to your product, Nils, but I could never sell it.
People are trying. People are trying. It happens every year.
Well, you could throw enough money at it, and I'm talking a lot of money to actually do it, but it would be impossible to sell it. You've broken, you and a few others have broken the back of the market early on. And therefore, you have the traction, you have the opportunity, you have the growth opportunity, and you have the connectivity coming into these markets. I met somebody last week who pitched up on a stand and said, "We've started a fantastic business. It's a PMS." I'm just like, "Oh my God, really? Please, that's 612." So yeah, I'm seeing big company controls here, and I'm seeing roll-ups, and I'm seeing companies who actually have in the right niches being acquired too.
Yeah. And you have gone through this journey, right? Like you've started companies and you have sold companies, which is, most fail. Very few actually do the whole journey, and even fewer just several times. What changes in how you run a company from when you consider yourself sort of the founder operator and when you are preparing the company for an exit?
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, a couple of times, 3 times in this industry personally. And because I do M&A work, I've been involved in a few sales over the last few years as well. I've also sold businesses in my biomedical days, because we started some businesses and we sold them as well. What changes? The mindset changes in terms of, okay, I've got to stop worrying every day now about what I'm doing on a minute by minute basis. And I got to try and figure out how I'm going to get the best exit reward out of this. And how do you structure that so that that happens? A lot of businesses don't sell because they planned it. A lot of businesses sell because they have to sell. And that might be personal reasons. It might be because they're not financially strong enough. It might be because they've identified that the market is about to crush them. There's a whole raft of reasons. If you're over 55 years old and you're running a management company, you're certainly a target for acquisition if you've got a decent portfolio. The mindset that should happen is you should plan it 2 or 3 years in advance. You should actually set your goals out as to how you're going to put your business in a very decent shape so that you are acquirable and of interest. So in a management business as opposed to tech business, these days, post-COVID, everybody's looking at profitability. Pre-COVID, I did 18 months to stay Alfred, the multifamily business. That was all about scale. That was Sonder, all about scale. It was Lyric, all about scale. Who can actually grow the fastest, get the most inventory, not worry about the investment, because everybody's going to give us 100 million. These days, it's very much about, do you make money? Do you have a well-organized company? Is the owner the biggest dependency of the business? Do you have a structure that you can grow from? Is your portfolio of quality? Do you have standard operating procedures? Do you know the business? Can you put it down on paper? What is the market like around you? What penetration do you have? And there's probably 20 or 30 things you can put in a tick box to actually say, this is what a beautiful company looks like. And the other thing I say to everybody I work with is get yourself out there and start networking. Mm-hmm. You go to conferences. I go to a lot of conferences. We always see the same 1,000 people. Many of these managers have never even met any of those 1,000 people either. So it's very important to get yourself out there, get your face out there, start understanding what everybody else is doing, where the market is going, what is actually happening. I mean, the UK is mature, and it's a really good example of what can happen. So over the last 10 or 15 years, I'm guessing 300, 400, 500 properties have been rolled up. And now we have super managers. We have Sykes Cottages with 24,000. We have Travel Chapter with 16,000. We have a Ways with 20,000 plus. And the good companies have been hoovered up. Ours was one of them. We were hoovered up as part of that, one of those portfolios in the UK. In Europe, that has not really happened. So we have thousands, literally thousands of small managers with an average of probably somewhere between 40 and 65 properties. They struggle to grow. It's getting more challenging for them. The OTAs are taking more money out of them. Costs are on the increase. You can expect roll-ups in Europe in the prime destinations. It's happening in the Eastern Europe with a few companies. I won't mention who, but they're out there on the radar. But it hasn't really happened as much in Southern Europe, Portugal, Spain, and particularly Italy and places. So I think we're going to see that happening as well. We're turning into an enterprise business. It's got legislation, it's got governance, it's got dangers everywhere. And only the large can actually defend against these things at scale.
We're also seeing a lot more regulation coming. And you, of course, have also worked with compliance in your career. And I think it's fair to say that there is a lot more compliance and regulation now than even 5 or 10 years ago. Do you think this will accelerate the sort of transition from independent hosts to these larger enterprise companies? That sort of shift the balance, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing compliance everywhere. We're seeing legislation everywhere. We're seeing a lot of politicians bouncing off the back of it. Fortunately, we are now seeing data coming in, and we're going to be able to see the truth behind a lot of these arguments, which is really good for the industry. So registration, I think, is a really good thing. Licensing planning is a little more challenging. Don't really want to see too much of that on day one. That gives everybody the opportunity for visibility of what is happening on the ground. And that means the authorities, they will ensure that compliance is within the short-term rental industry. So health and safety, fire regulations, everything that goes along with that. I mean, you can take it out to planning if you really want to, but there are core things which are really, really important. And they are essentially health and safety. They're the things that you have to worry about with guests, So behind the scenes, you obviously got the insurances and everything else that goes with it which support your infrastructure of physical compliance. And we are definitely going to see a lot more of that. Managers are in, I'd say, a privileged position, but they also have to deal with their owners. And if you say to an owner, you've got to put in new fire doors, you can imagine how challenging that is. Well, I'm afraid those owners are simply going to have to stop renting. Because although a manager is telling you to do it, it's like reporting your taxes. If you don't comply with that, you can't rent either.
Do you think we're approaching that level where it's becoming unsustainable for individual hosts or informal hosting?
I don't think it's unsustainable today. I think in a couple of years, it might well become unsustainable because of the governance that's being introduced by authorities around the world, particularly in the Western world. Hotels have been lobbying against us forever, despite the fact that Airbnb has now decided it wants to get into hotels as well, which seems could be quite damaging to their short-term rental business. But they are right on so many aspects of it. If you run a good short-term rental as an individual, you will care about health and safety. You will care about all those elements of your business that have to be addressed. every compliance element will need to be addressed. And that is both physical and software reporting wise as well. So the cream will rise to the top here, and you will get very, very good, well-reviewed, independent short-term renters. And let's face it, Airbnb is pushing to that as well. If you don't have a 4.6 now or a 4.7, it's probably a 4.9 soon anyway. You won't rise to the top of the listing. So there will be, it's not going to go away, there will be a captive market of individuals who do extremely well, and they will use software and hardware to run their businesses. But there will be a swathe of these that will disappear. And they are disappearing in urban markets right now. I mean, they are disappearing. One of the things I've taken away from the last 2 years of all the conferences is the number of urban managers I've spoken to. And they're all kind of saying the same thing. They're all saying, I have a distributed portfolio of 60, 70, 80 properties around London or any of these places. It's very difficult to run my business because of the distribution. They're all talking, I need a block of apartments. I need a single block to actually manage. And that's the way it's going. You will have industrial sized businesses running these as well, and acquiring them and leasing them, So I think that small manager, distributed urban areas, got to be really, really tough.
Yeah, we're seeing exactly that same thing in our customer base, because this has been a core customer of Minut. Like, it would basically difficult to run a business like that without it. And we're seeing the guest demand is very much still there. Like, guests still want to stay in a short-term rental when they go to a city. But what's fulfilling that demand is these new apartment hotels, which has I would say maybe a higher general standard, but never hits the right peaks, right? Like, it's never better than you expected. It's exactly what you expect. I think, like, both all of the regulation coming and like the operational aspects are changing the industry very rapidly there. So very much agree with that. Yeah. So now obviously you do a lot of consulting, and so you're in a great position to see where AI is being deployed across the industry. What have you come across recently that has been surprising or very impressive?
There are people in our industry right now who are, in previous life, you'd call them nerds or anoraks, because they are so deeply involved in how to use AI to improve their business. So in the tech world, which is your space, I am actually super impressed with the way people are bolting together multi-agents, like using OpenClaw and things like that to drive sales. Okay, so that's not a great thing for the audience to hear, because my inbox is full of people trying to sell me things, and it's AI generated. But I am actually impressed with the way they've put all this together as an architecture to run sales 24 hours a day. If you've ever been in sales, I think you have to be impressed with that a little bit. In the management world, the thing that I am impressed about is the business intelligence, because once upon a time, it was very, very hard to get information. So I've worked with companies looking to sell, looking to acquire. And I'm always disappointed with the amount of financial information that is available and the understanding of their business, their distribution, what their margins are, with AI and the right tool sets these days. And essentially it's coming back to PMSs and things again, where you have all your information in a single space and maybe hooked into an external financial accounting package, like a Xero or something. It can actually tell you on a day-to-day business how well your properties are performing, how well your staff are performing, what your linen costs are, what your marketing costs are. It can give you management accounts on a minute-by-minute basis, and it can allow you to change your actions. So I've been watching the dynamic pricing companies recently as well. So if you took Price Labs, or you took Beyond, you took any of these, companies like My Data Value are doing fantastic things on Booking.com. you see that they're using AI to bring interpretation into the industry. So 4 years ago, I guess, dynamic pricing was, we need dynamic pricing because I don't have to do anything. I just bolt it in and it gives us the best prices. Well, that never really happened because it failed on so many occasions because lack of data, lack of interpretation, different portfolios, different geographies, everything else. Now you speak to them and they say, everybody needs a revenue manager. So revenue managers are very special individuals. They understand technology, data, and a little bit of magic, and they also have to understand your business. Well, now we're seeing AI coming into the dynamic pricing tools, which is giving the revenue managers a much better opportunity to make those decisions about pricing going forward. And I think at some point we might see the revenue managers disappear because AI will be doing it for you. And the beauty for a manager is they don't have to go into a back end and see a whole bunch of graphs, try and understand what's going on, because the AI tool says, hey, Richard, I think you probably need to drop your prices by 2% over the next 2 weeks. And then the weekend coming, put it up to add an extra $100 overnight because there's an event happening. And you'll just push a button, it'll do it for you. So that, and then connect that to your PMS, which says, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, we'll change the prices for you now. Oh, and you also don't need as many staff this weekend. So we'll make sure the contractors are informed that we don't need 3 of them. I mean, this is the way AI is going. It's replacing humans. So I am really impressed with all that. It's not perfect, but it is coming. It is coming. And all the people who say AI is overblown, well, maybe they're not existing in our industries, So, yeah, there's a lot. You and I won't have jobs. I won't have a job until old anyway.
Yeah, maybe it's even something to look forward to. It's hard to know. We could talk about AI for I'm sure like many hours, and maybe we should. But to sort of round off the conversation, I think that we always ask our guests is, as a host, what is the most crazy experience that you've had to go through?
Crazy. I've had a lot of really, really challenging customers over the years. They all generally fall into the same camp. I won't mention names, but international football stars wildly drunk, being carried home over their shoulder and dumped in a villa. Being called up on Christmas morning to sort of toilet out when they got 3 others because they didn't realize that Christmas Day in the UK was actually on the 25th and they celebrated it on the 24th. There's a raft of those little things. I don't think there's anything especially crazy. My wife is a superstar at fixing stuff. So replacing an industrial level boiler over a 24-hour period because 24 guests are going to get really upset. I think most of the stuff has just been unexpected hazards put in your way to try and avoid destruction of your business. Yeah, there's some stuff I can't mention. I don't think people would like me to.
That sounds like an entrepreneurship experience, if I ever heard one.
Yeah, in many ways, it's a lack of planning. These days, if I started another management company, and I get asked this a lot, if you started another management company, what would you do? I would focus on great quality accommodation that sleeps 8 people in great locations. And I would use an enterprise level technology stack immediately. I would bolt in as much hardware as I possibly could, but I would actually have some people involved as well. Don't forget, we're humans. We've had hundreds of thousands of years of connectivity, talking to each other, looking at each other, facial expressions, interpretation. is super important, and people still connect really, really well. So that's what I do, and I'd only have 50 of them. I would not have 5,000 of them, because 50 is manageable. You can probably make as much money out of 50 really good ones as you can out of 5,000 urban ones, which are, what you said earlier, not above what you expect.
So there we have it, a perfect recipe for success. Thank you so much for sharing, Richard, and thank you for coming.
You're welcome, Nils. I enjoyed that, and I wish you success, of course, as well with what you're doing.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Minute by Minute. If today's episode gave you fresh insight, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Share this episode with your team and follow us on social media to continue the conversation and exchange your own operational stories. To learn more about privacy-first property protection, visit Minut.com. Until next time, make every minute count to maintain your property's safety.